Well, the design here comes from the ARCHICAD environment, which uses AutoCAD DWG as its format. And if we look in the list of layers that are associated with it, I've clicked on the All button here, and you can see a very large number of layers have come across in the conversion process. And what I want to do now is delete some of these layers that aren't used. The ones that are grayed out are not in use, so I can hold my Shift key down and grab a whole series of them. And let's demonstrate once more. I just scroll down until I come to a layer that has some content, and it's darker blue. This set is grayed out, so I hold my Shift key down and click, and then apply the cross sign. So what I'll now do is continue on, then save that drawing, and all of those layers will be gone. We'll note also that ARCHICAD uses colour in a different way to that which we do in gCADPlus. What I'm now going to do is just cancel from there. I'll swing into Layout View, and you can see that colour is used. I can't even read the text that's in the drawing, so it's pretty difficult for us to work with. Let's return to Model Space, and let's return to our drop-down list. And what I'll now do is the same thing. I'll just pick the first of the, use my Shift key down. I've selected the first of these. What I'm trying to do is change all of the colours back to colour 7, which is gCADPlus's default, and then I'll OK it, and you can see the immediate change. The only colours that will stay will be those symbols which have their colour implicitly set. So if I go now into Layout Space, I can now start to read the text and work a little more easily with the drawing and produce plot. If we go back to print, if we go back to layers here, the other thing to check is just make sure the line weights are set to default, and they are, and notice that line types here are set to hidden line, and I think we've got ourselves into a position where we can begin to work happily with the drawing. You might just experiment with going View and Background Cover and turn it to white. So I'm in Model Space now, and I can see things quite clearly now. What we're missing, of course, is the footprint of the house, and I suspect that that was brought in as what's called an external reference, and we've missed the external reference as it's coming across. If you're working with an architect that's producing drawings like this for you, ask them to bind their external references into the single file, and then you can do the conversion and it will hold that external reference. Sometimes you can get that as a separate copy and put it into the same folder as you're using when you're using the ODA converter, but it can create some issues. Depends what you need the drawing for. Well, I did mention line types, and I noticed that 2 layers have line types associated with them. One's a layer called LAN planter _ planter. Let's just have a look at that line type and see, and we'll check out what's on that layer. So a quick way to do that is to go to Tools and isolate a layer, and we want that layer called LAN _ planter. So we'll say OK, and now we've isolated that particular layer. So the layer it's got some hatching on it, and a large amount of hatching, in fact, which is scattered over lots of different areas, which is not the way we work in gCADPlus. But I'm looking for it's on that layer, and I'm looking for the hatch pattern name. It's a custom pattern. It's got a style of 8 18. Let's now go back here and turn on all layers. Just right click on there and say all layers are now on, and they jump up. So it's those layers around here. So anything on that layer will be drawn with a particular line type, which is a hidden line type. So that's just a little tricky. You would probably want to change that just for the moment back to default, because if you're using a line type with a big line type spacing, you might in fact be missing something. So I'd be inclined to go back to our layers and just select this one and turn it back to, line type here. We want it set to continuous, a solid line, and we'll do the same with this one here. Set it back to, it's actually click in there and it's back to continuous. Now that might not make any difference, and in fact it hasn't, but the line type's now gone. It's also worth going to Format and Line Types and just look at the line types that have come across. And we had the same problem that we had with layers, so we can remove these line types that are no longer needed in the drawing, and we'll remove them. And we'll save the drawing and just go back there again, line types, see if we've managed to remove them. So we've got one particular line type left, which we can't remove that one. Of course, that's part of the base that you cannot remove. So we've just simplified the drawing a little bit more. I'm not sure that the file size would have gone down much, but we'll have a little look. No, it's pretty much the same. It's gone down 20 kilobytes or so. So I think we've got to the stage where we can at least work with the drawing relatively easily, and the drawing consists of an awful lot of hatches and hatch patterns. Well, if I zoom in on part of the drawing, this is obviously an entrance driveway for cars along here, and if I select this polyline, which represents a walkway, notice that I'm getting the total length of the polyline is 81 3/4 of an inch, and area is reported as 3154. If I use the distance command and I measure across the path, let me zoom in just a little, from one end point to the other, I get 72. So 72 units, 72 inches, that's a 6 foot wide path. So clearly this drawing has come across from the ARCHICAD environment with its base units as inches. So any inquiry of this drawing is going to spit back numbers to me in inches. Now we normally recommend that if you're working in the US, in the US version, the imperial version of gCADPlus, that you work in decimal feet. It's not a problem, but if you're trying to get measurements and areas and apply some dimensioning perhaps to this drawing, you need to be aware of this change. So this is decimal inches, the first drawing we've seen of its type. And you could deal with it by simply scaling and converting from inches to decimal feet. But it's another illustration of how you have to watch things when drawings are coming from another environment. If we look at drawing units here, you can see it's come across, the drawings come across as having architectural units and units to scale inserted at inches. I haven't looked at dimensioning yet, but let's do that. Here's dimensioning styles. So a whole lot of dimensioning styles of different types have come across with the drawing, lots and lots of them. So to sum up, this design has been produced in gCADPlus based on information that's come from ARCHICAD, and unfortunately there's a lot of complexity that's come across with it. You just need to be aware of it. Depends what you want to do, of course, with the based information.